So after reading your guys' comments and seeing the feedback I got on that last video, I decided, let's do it again. So today, we're going to go over the best horror movies from each year of the first 10 years of the 2000s. Let's get it. Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Nick here from the Lost River Drive-In, and I'm doing it again. I'm going back through another decade, and I'm going to give you my favorite horror movie of each one of those years, starting in 2000 and going up to 2009. Now, I want to say a couple of these years, just like in the last video, they were hard, especially in the mid-2000s. There was a couple years there where it was banger after banger. So I'll mention a couple honorable mentions because there's just some that I can't leave out. Like, it's just not right. It doesn't feel right to me. But having said that, I want you guys to comment down below. Give me your favorites from each one of these years and tell me why. So without further ado, let's start off with the year 2000. My favorite horror movie of the year 2000 is going to be Final Destination. Now, honestly, this year wasn't as difficult as some other ones. I had this and one other option, which was American Psycho. So I want to give American Psycho a shout out because obviously I really enjoy that movie. I think most people do. Having said that, though, Final Destination was a movie that shaped my teenage years. I was terrified of flying, and then obviously you got the sequels, which made me terrified of log trucks, terrified of roller coasters, at least for a while, and so on and so forth. So Final Destination is just forever ingrained in my mind. Also, it can't go without saying that the movie came out less than a year before the September 11th attacks, which honestly, after Final Destination being a big phenomenon, and then what happened a year later, planes were not in a good spot. Like, people were scared of planes, and rightfully so. So thank you to James Wong and everybody involved with Final Destination for making me terrified of riding a plane for the first 20 years of my life. I'll never ever forget it. Now we're in the year 2001, and if you guys know anything about me, this should not surprise you at all. My favorite horror movie of 2001 is Jeepers Creepers. Now, I cannot tell you how frustrating it is to have such a classic horror movie just be completely mishandled ever since the first movie. Jeepers Creepers 2 is good fun. Jeepers Creepers 3 and Jeepers Creepers Reborn are cinematic abominations. Let's just call a spade a spade. But Jeepers Creepers was a movie that haunted my dreams. The movie came out when I was, 8 years old, and it was one of those movies that made you kind of scared of creepy trucks in the middle of nowhere, and what if this was real, and would I be able to not be scared around him, or would he smell some fear in me and want a part of my body? There was so much about this movie that really freaked me out. And I've honestly been so grateful to have the opportunity to visit the filming locations because it was filmed where my mom lives in Ocala, Florida. So I've been able to go see all the spots that are still standing today. And it was a really cool video and a really cool time. But Jeepers Creepers is a franchise that should have been so much more. And if it weren't for such a troubled, disgusting human being that was the filmmaker behind all of this, it probably would have been a much bigger franchise. But never take anything away from that first movie because it is a downright classic. Welcome to the year 2002, where as you're seeing a trend already with these movies, another movie came out that traumatized young Nick, and that is The Ring. I talked about this movie in a video a week or so ago, and I just can't say enough about this movie. This movie scared the absolute crap out of me when I was a little kid. I mean, it was just one of those movies that my mom rented, and we all just watched it as a family because, movie night. And Nick had nightmares and couldn't look at wells or TV screens normal again for like a decade. Yes, that's what this movie did to me. There's so much about this movie that is memorable. Naomi Watts is great in the role, and Samara being this character that you don't ever hear from or really see much from aside from coming through the TV and making your face all wonky. There's just a lot about this movie that made me super uneasy. Even the stuff they just show in flashes from the videotape itself is unsettling. It's enough to get under anybody's skin. So I understand why some people might be like, I prefer Ringu, which is the Japanese version, and that's a great film as well. But for me, it's The Ring, and a lot of that's nostalgia, but it's also just a really damn good horror movie. Now we have our first real controversy, and this one was hard. It's the year 2003, and there were two movies that battled it out to be number one. The first one, Although I did not choose it, the honorable mention is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. One of my favorite films from my childhood, the first horror film I remember seeing in theaters, and my favorite Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie. High bar, right? Unfortunately for the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, House of a Thousand Corpses came out the same year. Now, I could get technical and say, oh, well, House of a Thousand Corpses was technically 2 years before. It just sat on a shelf. But it came out in '03, so it's got to go in '03. Look, you guys know that I like Rob Zombie. Some people might call me a Rob Zombie apologist. Some people have unsubscribed to my channel because I like Rob Zombie. That's totally fine. But I feel like a lot of people agree with at least his first two movies. They're pretty damn good. I happen to think House of a Thousand Corpses is better than Devil's Rejects simply because House of a Thousand Corpses is truly this just like haunted hellscape of a Halloween amusement park ride. I don't even know what you want to call it. It's insane. And I love it. It's unsettling. It's one of those movies that actually did freak me out. I think it's one of the only, if not the only, Rob Zombie movie to ever kind of scare me at a younger age. It just made me feel things you don't normally feel. A lot of that is in the shot composition, the editing, the imagery, you name it. This was the perfect movie for Rob Zombie to jumpstart his filmmaking career, and I love this movie. So as much as Texas Chainsaw Massacre means a lot to me, I'm sorry, you ain't no House of a Thousand Corpses. Now we've reached the year 2004, and this may surprise some of you because it's not my favorite movie in this series, but I gotta give 2004 to Saw. Look, Saw was a phenomenon. It took the world by storm. A short film that James Wan and Lee Whannell made got them financing to make a bigger budget but still relatively low budget Hollywood film. Came out, bust onto the scene, made a ton of money, and spawned a franchise that's now 10 plus movies deep. That's a big deal. Saw is a movie that even if you're not a big fan of the franchise, I think a lot of people agree that the first Saw movie is still a really good movie. Because at this point, the focus wasn't on the traps, the focus was more on the people. It was more of a mystery and a thriller. Sure, there's gore and gross out in here, but this is a much more self-contained story. So I feel like most people can agree that this is a solid movie. But the thing that sends this movie over the top is the ending. I remember the first time I watched this movie, I did not see that coming. With Tobin Bell getting up off that bathroom floor, it's iconic. The game over line, it is iconic. I mean, I'll never hear the words game over the same again because of this movie. So if nothing else, Saw is just iconic. And it meant a lot to me when it came out, and it spawned my love for a franchise that I am so happy to still see thriving to this day. So 2004, it belongs to Saw. Now we've reached the year 2005, and I wanted to make sure I did my due diligence when I was putting together this list. And then I realized it doesn't matter, because 2005 belongs to The Descent. Let's just call a spade a spade. Yes, this list is my favorite from each year, but I will argue in this case, in 2005, The Descent is inarguably the best horror film to come out this year, and one of the best horror films of the entire decade. Look, The Descent will unsettle you in ways that most movies cannot. I remember the first time I saw this movie. I think I was 12 or 13. And I remember just feeling uneasy the entire time. The claustrophobia, how dark it is. You can almost feel what these characters are going through. You're living vicariously through them. There's so much about this movie. You're halfway into the movie before you really get much action, get to see much of the creatures. A lot of it is this slow buildup. And I love that about it. Because if you ask me, there are a few things scarier than getting lost in subterranean caves with little to no light, no food, no water. That's just suboptimal. And then let's add in creatures that eat people. Like, come on, dude. This movie is absolutely incredible. I cannot say enough about this movie. All I can say is that there was a promising sequel, and then the third act of that sequel pissed me off more than anything in the world because it undermines the entire ending of the first movie. Now we've reached 2006, and this was difficult. I want to first give a shout out to Saw 3. Although it didn't win for this year, it is my favorite Saw film. I also want to give a shout out to the remake of When a Stranger Calls. Very good movie. Want to give a shout out to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre at the beginning. Great movie as well. But the movie that won the day is one that has grown on me as the years have gone on. And if you guys have followed my channel, you probably know. And I didn't wear the t-shirt because I didn't want to give it away. That's Black Christmas. Look, I unapologetically love this movie. This is not like 2005, where I will argue that this is the best horror film of the year. It's not. It's my favorite, though. Black Christmas 2006 is such a fun time. It is absolutely like You have to watch it every Christmas. I mean, at least during the season. You have to. It is one of those movies that is dripping with atmosphere. It is so fun. And it's not even, it doesn't offend you in any way when you're comparing it to the original, because it tries something totally different. It's like, let's just go for the gross out. Let's just douse this set every time we can in Christmas decor and snow and Christmas music. And let's have pretty girls and let's have gory kills and let's gross people out. Yes, nothing says Christmas quite like that. So although there are a lot of movies that I loved in the year 2006, come on, dude, I'm going Black Christmas. Now, I struggled a little bit with the year 2007 as well, and not because of Rob Zombie's Halloween. You guys know how I feel about that movie. But the movie that ended up winning the year for me was Trick or Treat. Now, I love Trick or Treat. I feel like most people do. I actually feel like it has gotten to the point where it's like, yeah, we've all talked about it so much. We're almost kind of burnt out because we want a sequel. You know, we want to expand upon that movie. It is such a lucrative property and it's been so underutilized, and it's sad. But that's not the fault of the first movie. The first movie is quintessential Halloween viewing. It's one of my favorite Halloween movies. I watch it every October 31st. I always end Halloween night with Trick or Treat and Halloween 1978. And I feel like that will be my tradition until I die. It's just going to be a yearly thing for me. Trick or Treat's a movie that just oozes Halloween atmosphere from start to finish. It's briskly paced, so it doesn't overstay its welcome. It's silly, over the top, gory, funny, fun, and genuinely creepy in some moments, with some surprises too. I just don't know how there are people in the world that don't like Trick or Treat. And I know there's somebody watching this video right now that's about to comment and be like, yeah, Nick, I don't like Trick or Treat. I'm being facetious, but I do struggle to understand it because this movie is a freaking banger. Now we've reached 2008, and this was a year that I struggled a little bit with as well, and then I realized, nah, I do also think that this movie, like 2005, is not only my favorite of the year, but the best of that year, and that's The Strangers. Look, y'all know I like The Strangers Prey at Night more, but that's because I'm a sucker for that 80s slasher era. Like, I just really love that. So to be able to give me a throwback like that with Prey at Night, I was all for it. Having said that, The Strangers is one of the most effective home invasion movies I've ever seen. The two movies are very different. The first movie, The Strangers are hiding for a lot of the movie. They're messing with you. They're playing with their food. And it's just delightfully just depraved. But it's super effective. And it makes anybody that lives in the Midwest or an area like that that's wooded and kind of isolated kind of freaked out. After you watch this movie, you ever gone to a cabin or anything in the woods and you've been like, if you're not thinking about Deadites, you're probably thinking about The Strangers, right? I think this movie will be studied for years to come as the way to do a home invasion movie, and the way to do it so simplistically, yet so effectively. I'm very excited for the new movies coming out this year, but 2008, it belonged to The Strangers. And why? Because you were home. Now rounding out this list, it's 2009. You guys know where I'm going with this one, but let me just set it up. Let me tell you what it was like to be a 15-year-old Nick going to the theater and watching this movie unfold on the screen, and the feeling that it gave me. And still to this day, how I'll make multiple videos a year on this movie, and just any chance I get, talk about this movie, laud this movie for how much I love it. It's Rob Zombie's Halloween 2, baby. I have said so many times through so many videos why I love this movie so much. I don't need to really get into that. Let me just say this, if you're a new viewer that hasn't seen any of those videos of mine, this movie turned the franchise on its head and tried to do something completely different. Rob Zombie took the idea of survivor's guilt and PTSD and trauma and said, rather than people getting better and always having these Hollywood endings and these fairy tale, oh yes, everything ended up being okay, why don't I flip that on its head? Nothing ends up okay and everyone ends up dead. I love it. I love it. Like, to take a franchise at the time that was 31 years old and be able to put a totally new spin on it, I was all for it. Grounded in realism while also dripping in surrealism. Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 is a friggin' banger. So those are my favorite horror movies from each year from 2000 to 2009. Now you guys might go, why didn't you do 2010? Well, because including 2000, that was 10 years. Now, if you guys watch this video and comment on this video and really enjoy it, guess what? I'll do another one. I will continue to do these because these are fun. I like them. So if you guys like it, let me know down below. Leave a like on this video. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Follow me on social media. My handles are down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. This is Nick at the Lost River Drive-In, and I'm pulling out.